All right, everybody, welcome. We've got a big thing to talk about going into tomorrow. We're going to be looking at a severe storm threat starting around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, going through the early afternoon hours of tomorrow. I'm going to be walking you step by step through the process of the storms moving through the area. Without further ado, let's get into this. All right, so starting off, we're going to be noting that the Storm Prediction Center has issued a level 2 slight severe risk for the majority of the area. This area includes St. Louis, includes Troy, Missouri, Jefferson City, Columbia, it includes our Washington, Missouri. It includes the Ozarks. It includes pretty much everywhere around us for the majority of the area. And even if you're not in the slight risk area, we have the larger marginal risk, this green area right here, encompassing the majority of the area as well. So we're going to see most of our severe weather confined to this slight risk area here. Now, this threat is going to include not just uh, severe winds, we're going to see 2% chance of some brief weak tornadoes developing in this area. And again, this is going to include St. Louis, it's going to include Washington, our area right around here, Springfield, Jeff City, Columbia, Kirksville, up on the northern extent of this, and really just the entirety of the I-70 and I-44 corridors through the state of Missouri. So really watching that going into tomorrow as well, just outside of that wind threat, which curious here that is. We've got this yellow area, 15% chance of damaging winds. We're looking 60 to 70 miles per hour for those damaging winds, and we're really going to see these storms move from west to east across the area. And this green area here, that's going to be a 5% chance. So a little bit lower, but still the threat does exist. So even if you're not in this centralized slight risk area region here, still watch out in case some of those storms could become severe either in early morning hours, which we'll see that kind of on this western side of the risk. We'll see these storms moving west to east. So early morning, we're going to see those storms developing around here, and then we're going to see these storms tracking west east going through the day. I'd say for our area here in the St. Louis area, I'd say between 10 o'clock and 2 p.m. would be the target time for those severe storms. And once they move through, once the leading edge moves through, we'll likely transition to a pretty heavy rain going for a few hours. And just really note that while we're not expecting flash flooding, it's still possible that we could have localized rainfall amounts of an inch or inch and a half that could fall in an hour or two's time. So we really need to watch for just a little bit of surface runoff going through tomorrow. And if we see those heavier amounts falling in a shorter amount of time, maybe some localized flash flooding possible with this event. But right now, I think our biggest threats for anything damage oriented would be revolving around our wind threat and maybe a brief weak tornado, especially located in central or southwest Missouri. All right, so now getting into the specifics of things, we're looking at a high temp tomorrow around 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. We're going to see temperatures around 68, 67 degrees for the majority of the St. Louis area and west along the Missouri River, generally falling off as we move further west towards Jeff City, Columbia, 66, 64 degrees there. But we're really going to see our temperatures climb into the late morning and then fall going through the early afternoon. Now, we're also going to have, with this heat early on, dew points, which are expected to be in the low 60s here, 61, 62 degrees in the St. Louis area. And we're really watching for that just because of the moisture that's going to be available. Now, we're pretty certain that we will have a warm, moist environment for these storms to develop in. Now, it's not exactly certain if we'll see the storms necessarily grow because of the instability, though. All right, so next on the list is going to be something a little more complicated. This is a form of energy called collective available potential energy, or CAPE. Basically, the available energy in the atmosphere for these storms to feed off of. And generally, for a severe thunderstorm to develop, we're looking for CAPE values close to 1,000 joules per kilogram. Right now, though, we're looking at through the early morning and mid-morning hours tomorrow, values closer to 500 to 750 joules per kilogram for most of the area. We're reaching 607 there over towards Columbia, and I mean, really, it's not very impressive going into tomorrow. And that's one of the biggest concerns regarding this um, severe event is whether or not we'll have enough instability and energy like this available in the atmosphere for these storms to develop. So we're kind of on the ropes there on whether or not we'll really see that potential grow or shrink going into tomorrow morning, which I'll keep you updated going into that as well. Now, one thing we will have plenty of going into these severe storms tomorrow is shear. We're going to be looking at quite a bit of wind shear available in the atmosphere, and this is really geared towards that tornado threat. We will have winds going at one direction at an altitude and a different direction at another altitude, and those are going to be available going through pretty much the entire uh, length of the event. And we're really kind of watching this because as long as we have that wind shear present in the atmosphere, that's going to carry a possibility that we could see cyclone genesis and tornado development possible within these storms. All right, so up next we have our storm relative helicity, again, just showing that available energy in the atmosphere. And right now we've got pretty modest amounts across our portion of the area. This is at noon when the storms will likely be rolling through at their strongest for our area. And really, it's not too impressive at this time. Again, we're really watching how much energy will be available going into tomorrow morning. And if we have higher amounts of energy in the atmosphere, that's going to lead to more potential for severe storms. If we have less, that's going to be a less potential. And we're probably going to see that change a little bit going into tomorrow morning. So definitely expect an update there once we get closer to that event. And if you're wondering what's really going to drive whether or not we'll have more energy in the atmosphere is direct sunlight on the ground, heating it up and pushing that energy on the ground level further up into our atmosphere. And once we start to see storm clouds develop, that energy will kind of bolster the tops of those clouds. And once we see storm clouds reaching up towards the top of the troposphere, called the tropopause, once we see those clouds reaching the top of that and blooming out into sort of an anvil shape, that's when we know we have a very strong thunderstorm in the area. And that's really what we're watching for with these wind-driven events. So you want that updraft in the storm rising into the atmosphere, hitting the tropopause, and then coming down in a strong downdraft. That's what's going to be bringing most of your straight line damaging winds. And that's also a necessity for, again, your tornado potential to develop. We don't just need the wind shear in the atmosphere. We have to have a strong updraft for that wind shear to wrap around. And really, the key behind all this is having strong updrafts, which is going to lead me to my next point. All right, so up next, and this is really a lot more advanced. This is going to be our maximum updraft helicity. So basically saying the strength of our updrafts within these storms, within these individual cells. While this will be a line segment moving through the entire area, that type of squalls, we're really going to see individual cells containing these damaging winds. It's not the entire line having these winds on them, it's individual cells pushing that air into the ground and spreading it out in those damaging wind gusts. And what we're really noting here is we're not really seeing a whole lot of strong updrafts in our area. Maybe some to our north towards Bowling Green, perhaps, and then southwest towards Springfield and Joplin, and then in southern Missouri. But really, in our area, we're not really, we're kind of lacking that strong support for these storms to hold together and to have that strong downward burst into the ground. So, really noting that we're really kind of looking at weaker storms over our area. That's not to say we won't see some severe storms capable of developing. It's just our confidence is much lower in seeing that develop over a widespread area. All right, and so to end it all off, we're going to finish up with our rainfall totals for this event. Generally, for our area, we're looking between a half inch and maybe an inch and a half, especially off towards the northwestern part of our area. We're looking probably close to an inch and a half. See, look, an inch, 1.4 inches there. That's going to be just north of Herman. That's probably going to be where most of our heaviest rain will fall, is in this corridor here, north of Interstate 44. But again, generally for most of the area, a quarter, half inch to again 1.5 inches likely. And we're just going to see that again pushing through late morning, early afternoon tomorrow. Should be out of our area by 3 or 4 p.m. Once that moves through, expect clear skies and colder temperatures on the way. 54 the high for Washington on Thursday, and then Friday looking towards the mid 40s. So big cool down expected. Uh, Maybe we'll start to see a little bit of our winter come back going into early March. I'm kind of hoping on that. But right now, short term, let's watch the severe event. If it develops, again, we'll need to watch for those damaging winds and then also for that brief weak tornado potential. So that's all I've got for you today, folks. I'm Ian Pfeiffer, otherwise known as Weatherman Fife, and I'll see you in the next forecast.